In this second Python video, I want to recap from the first video some of the things that we've done, and then I want to go back and show you some of the tricks using Python to take your programming or your coding to the next level. As a recap, in the first Python program, it was that classic hello world idea. You're learning a new programming language, you need to get the software unpacked and loaded on your computer, then you need to get it running and just type in some basic, something really simple and run it, save the file and run it and see if it actually works. And in this case, we had that print hello world. Print meaning it sends it out, it's an output command, it doesn't actually send it to a printer, it prints it to the screen. And for some of you, it was coming out on the shell. I shouldn't say some of you, it should have all come out on that shell, that output input sort of window when you launched Python. A few of you had trouble getting Python to work, and I think one of the difficulties started here. Depending on how you loaded it on your computer, you may have had that folder for Python and you saw a few options, and most people got through this, but a few launched here. And honestly, when you launch this, you get some kind of a, I don't know what kind of window it is. I don't know what that is. I never use it. What you do want to do is launch the IDE for Python. If you looked in here, you see this IDLE. In fact, they have a new version. An IDE is called an Integrated Development Environment. And if it's an IDLE, is an Integrated Development Learning Environment. An IDE is a common tool when you're coding or programming, when you're learning a language. What is an IDE? I'll go back. When you're coding, you could use something like Notepad. You're really just doing the very most basic word processing. You're just typing text and then you run the text. So you could do it in Notepad. You could write your assignments for English in Notepad. You could use this word processor, but it has very limited tools to help you. Probably some of you are familiar with Microsoft Word. Again, in a sense, it's an IDE word processor. It's an integrated development environment to do word processing, and you have all these integrated tools that will help you write some amazing documents, but do you really need them? You could just type them in Notepad, but all these formatting tools, all these extra things that help you develop and build a better document. In Google Classroom, I think all of you are familiar with Google Docs. It's also an integrated development environment, although it's in the cloud now, it's set online, but they really just copied what some of the other word processors had always done. So when you're using Python, this window pops up. It has all these different tools, and as we learn our programming, these tools are integrated into this environment to help you learn how to program. There are other things you can do. One of the first tools I'd like you to learn how to use is show line numbers. It comes up with this column down the side, and it will start numbering each of the lines you write in your code. It's a useful tool to help you learn. When you go into the IDE, IDLE, I guess I should keep calling it, you can configure other options. You can change the fonts that it uses, the kinds of highlighting that it does. Some of the other tools are hiding here. I honestly, I don't change much. You can figure it if you want, excuse me, if you want, but I really just would like you to put the line numbers to show. The next big thing I want to show you, and I need you to do this from now on, is in my second program, I'm adding a bunch of lines. For each one, you'll notice I have the hashtag or the number sign out in front. This is a special symbol or a special character in the IDE, and it basically tells the programming environment, ignore everything else after. Notice when you put a number sign or a hashtag in, it codes it in that red color. What the IDE is recognizing is that all of these lines with the hashtag or the number sign are called comment lines or documentation lines. They're not there to do any coding. It doesn't affect the output of your program. It doesn't do anything to control how your program runs. They're strictly there for the humans. Years ago, when I was a co-op student at Waterloo, I did programming on a job, and in that factory, the engineer, the electrician, my boss, we all needed to jump in and look at the code. And they would make changes, or I would make changes, and we all agreed we needed the documentation so we all understood what you were trying to do in the coding. So don't mix up. The documentation or the comments are just there to help the other people, the other humans reading your code, know what you're doing. For us in school, 2 comments, always, always, always at the top. Put your name, first comment every time. Second line, date, all the time. Subtle thing, this is again my style. I put blank lines in. Notice I don't need to put the blank lines in, but it's a very different style of program for the humans to read. Suddenly, when I put those in, all of a sudden my program is a bit easier or spaced out. Probably your English teacher would say the same. Put blank lines in, indent your paragraphs. It makes it easier to see, and I think we can all agree on that. The next thing you're going to put in your comments for every program you write for me is a purpose, a title. What is this program for? This is my style. Some teachers do this, some don't. I put a comment to say this is the start of the main program, the main part of my program, and then this is the end of the main part of my program. If some of you take the computer programming courses, ICS, you will learn that there are subparts, smaller parts of your program that aren't considered main, and typically they go here. Some teachers write them at the bottom. They may be modules, subroutines, functions. These are other subsets of the main part of the program that you might have to put in these areas. So why did I say main program? Because anything between here and here is the main part, and there might be other parts that belong with the whole program but aren't the main part of it. For this one, I don't have anything up there, so I just left it blank. Again, it seems almost too much commenting, but I'm practicing and I'm trying to teach you the techniques. In your main part of your program, you might have a lot of lines of code. Right now we only have 1, but you want to try to put a comment for the main chunks of the program. What are you doing here? What are you doing there? What's each chunk of it? Again, in this case, it's pretty simple stuff. Okay. I only have really 1 line of code in my whole program because all these other lines of comments will be ignored when the program is run. When I run the program, well, honestly, nothing really changes because the shell shows what comes out, and there's really only 1 output, this print statement. All the other comments get ignored when they run the program. So it doesn't change the output, but it sure changes what we humans see when we're looking at the coding. So I'm going to ask you in your assignment to take your Hello World program and comment it, and then give me some documentation that you've done that. Just the next program I want you to work on, and I'm going to hide mine if I hope this works. Yeah, I put it down here out of the way, so I'm not going to show you how I did it. Okay, but when I run it, how did it come out? Right after here, the output shows up. So right after here, there's my output. Blank line, boom, 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 boom. How did I do that? Well, I made the program write a blank line on purpose, then another one. Then I had it output that. Then I had it output that. And then I had it output that. And then I had it output that. Each one of these outputs is with a print statement. And then I printed that, and I printed that, and then, oh, another blank line, and then I printed that. So I had a whole bunch of print statements in this program, okay? I'm not going to let you see how I did it. But your second assignment will be, how do I make this output to print? I want you to try to figure out how I did that. Again, all with just one command line, just with a print statement. That's all it was. That's all I did. But I also, I'm not going to cheat here. I made comments everywhere. So the second assignment will be making this program to make a simple box with a bit of commenting, some blank lines just for style, and give me evidence that you've done it. I also wanted to share something kind of silly or fun. You're learning on the Python software that has an IDE, sort of integrated development environment, online, or on the computer, I should say more carefully. I remember this machine. When I was in high school, this is where I first learned how to program or code. This is a machine built by Hewlett-Packard, and you can see the name written there somewhere. And in this computer, there was no monitor, there was no screen. That was the screen. And that's where the output came out. When you said a print command, it actually printed on that thing. That's where it would come out. When we're doing in a lot of programming languages, when you say print, it actually comes out in that shell again. That's their print space. But in the old days, there actually was a printer. Every time you said something to go out, it didn't go to a screen, it went to the printer. There actually was an output device of some sort. It was a one-line LED display here. Because you didn't have an input screen to type your code in, and you didn't have an IDE, believe it or not, we had to program with computer cards. I don't know if any of you have done a Scantron test or something for your teachers, where you bubble in your answers for the multiple choice. But now you had to bubble in all of my code, and you had one card for each line in your code. So here was that print command, and some of these others, I don't even remember what they meant. And you had to bubble in all of your text, all of your coding. I would write programs for my assignments in that programming class, and I had maybe 100, 150 cards stacked up. You would stack your cards into this card reader, and this machine would go floop, 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 and read each one of the cards and code it. And then I guess the main chip of the CPU in this machine would process the data, and as long as you had no errors, your answers or your outputs would come out on this piece of paper. So you guys are lucky, you've come a long way, but that's what it used to be like. Okay, sorry, I'm jumping around. So your job is to get those two programs, oh sorry, I'm lost again, your two programs documented with comments and those challenges that I had. Good luck.